Hey, John, welcome back. You have a diverse background, everything literally from musician to technology to a brand major innovator to an investor. Share with us how you've evolved in your career and have you reached the answer where what do you want to be when you grow up? Has that happened?
Absolutely not. I never want to know what I want to be when I grow up. And yeah, the truth is, whenever you're in the moment, you're like, what the hell am I doing? And it's not until you sort of look back and you go, oh my God, all these random events also make sense, and you get that moment of clarity where it all clicks. But I had an interesting path. I mean, when I was 3 years old, I discovered that, I couldn't draw. But I discovered that with a ruler, I could, draw little houses. And then all of a sudden, I wanted to be an architect. And then I did learn to draw freehand. And then I wanted to become a cartoonist. And then I figured out that I could take the drawing and I could write a little bit. And I made a little newspaper for our family and would print up, one copy because that's all I had the energy to do, and share it with everybody. And then I discovered the family's Instamatic camera, which I guess for new generations, it was a camera with film. And then I wanted to be a photographer, and I was probably 7. Then I discovered the family movie camera, Super 8, and then I really got the bug. I got totally into making movies, and I would take all my friends out. We'd make little movies out in the woods, or we'd get our GI Joes together, make animations, and that bug lasted me through high school, and then I went to art school in Philadelphia. And then I hit a pivotal moment, which is I graduated from art school, and art school at the time totally ill-prepared you for life. You had no clue how to get a job. And it's like, there you are, you have this wonderful portfolio, and I was in this attic apartment with a 6-foot canvas sitting there painting it going, oh God, does this suck? And I was, it was hot Philadelphia summer, I was broke, bored, frustrated. And so I did, what many art students would do at that time, as the early 80s. We started a band, and we started by doing performance art in subways. And it wasn't pretty because we weren't musicians. We were art students. So I think we were scaring people. And then someone with an art gallery saw us and said, hey, why don't you come play our art gallery? And we're like, this seemed arty. So we're like, okay. Then some guy with a nightclub came along and said, hey, why don't you open up for a band? And we're like, we're not a band. Because it doesn't matter. It's new wave, as punk rock is like, do it yourself. So we did that. Then a guy with a record company came along and said, hey, let's put out some records. You're like, yeah. And then we started playing New York. We were playing clubs like Danceteria in New York. And we started going on tour. We went to Europe. We started putting out more records. And Warner Brothers finally came along to sign us. And right then it was, classic rock and roll tragedy. The band broke up. And I got back to where I was supposed to be. I started going back into design. So I spent most of the 80s being a rock and roller, and then got back on track with design. And one day walked into an ad agency and went, oh my God, here's where all the misfit boys and girls go, and I should get paid to work. And I had the skills, and so I was an art director and a designer in an ad agency. And right then the internet came along, and I was like, hey, look at this. And we had a big golf account, and so I was like, hey, look at all these golfers online. Hey, maybe our brand should be there. And my bosses were like, what? Golfers on the internet? That's just crazy, And so anyway, long story short, I started I went to New York and joined one of the largest, or one of the first internet agencies called Poppy Tyson. And it was this early. We created the first White House website, the first Netscape website, the first Cybercast, which was for Valvoline, and we incubated DoubleClick. So it was a lot of innovation. Nothing had been invented yet. So it was just like, well, can we do it? So it was a very exciting time, and built that company up, and it went public, and then started another one called Tribal DDB. Sort of said, well, I didn't get enough, internet, lift at that time, so did it all over again. And then after that, and these were part of big holding companies like IPG and Omnicom. And then after that, I decided to do it for myself and started a smaller agency called Keith and Young. and that also flourished. We worked with some great brands like Disney. And recently, like 2.5 years ago, I left that agency and to my partners and decided to get back to what I really loved was the innovation part that happened with the dawn of the internet. And there's a wonderful VC community up here in Boston, and I connected with two wonderful partners who've both been operators in business. They're not strictly VC type people. They're people who have grown their own businesses like I had, and we know what sales. We know what it's like to sell a product, and we know what it's like to grow a team, and we know what it's like to sweat payroll. And so when we talk to all these great companies in media tech and health tech, and they look at us and go, "Oh my God, you guys actually understand what it's like to grow a business. You're not a bunch of MBACs who just just turn up that sales machine, and we'll see the fortunes change."
Exactly.
We actually know what's involved, and we know how hard it is, and so we're very empathetic and hopefully very helpful.
So what are the, because obviously you are a leader in creating new ways for entrepreneurs, and for that matter, even established companies trying to, get out of their rigid way of doing things. What are the challenges and opportunities that you find dealing with those people, to market their product?
I think, you look at the world of opportunity, especially when you're a startup, and everybody's telling you, oh, you should do this, you do that. There's many possibilities of things to do, and many good answers, and they're all good, and some expert will come and say, well, this is the way, you got to do this. It's like, no, it's a way, and there are many good ways, and we've got to sort through which is the best path for us. But we also have to strip away all the unnecessary parts. The real challenge for a startup is distraction, and there's so many ways you could do, and you especially see it in their materials, in their presentations. They'll just get verbose in how they describe themselves. It's like, simple is so much better. Just leave some air around it, and what happens is you become confident when you say, here's who we are, here's what we stand for. Instead of taking people on this long trip around the block, it's that, you mentioned Steve Jobs, it's that Apple simplicity, just bang, just here's what we are, and that's all you need. So,
well, you mentioned something before about hiring people, which is one of the things I do and we do pretty well, basically, in our firm, but in helping companies hire people. But the one thing that really struck me was you talked about what was their purpose, or what I would call, what's starting to becoming more prevalent word is almost identifying your why, quote unquote, your why.
Yeah.
It sounds like that's, and I agree, simpler is better. Anytime you start going into a whole thing, it almost sounds like you're defensive rather than confident. So is that what you try to instill? What's our why, and how do we best get there?
That's a great way to put it, is what's your why? And I think people have it, and I think brands have it. And for a company, we talk about building a brand foundation, and that's really here's what we do, here's who we are, here's why we're different, here's our point of view, here's how we believe we're going to change the world. And you can do that for yourself personally too. It's like it's your mission, your vision, and how you're going to do it, and everything down to how you dress, and your personality that you live up to. So yes, it's all about answering why, and the more you can share that, the more people understand why. They'll get it, and they'll take it on.
Well, it's funny. One of my favorite quotes is a Maya Angelou quote about most people won't remember what you said, most people won't remember what you did, but they will always remember how you made them feel.
Yes.
And I think, get your opinion on this, I think if you've identified your why, as you said before, then your talk will be simpler but clearer, and you will make them feel great because you're passionate about your why.
Yes, but I also think you have to be passionate, but also compassionate. You have to understand who you're talking to and why are they listening to you? Why are they here today? And in my former job, I used to pitch a lot because I was an ad agency. I was pitching advertising,
Right.
and now in private equity, I am pitched to a lot. So I'm on the other side, and you see how you have to. A lot of people come in and just say, "Here's what we are," but they're not really understanding that for us, they need to explain why is this a good investment. It's very simple, and understand who your audience is and why are they buying, what are their concerns. I won the Disney Interactive account back in the early days, making our presentation all about them. There was nothing about us in there. It was all about them and what they need to do in their product. And oh, by the way, here's in the appendix is a little bit with our bios and stuff, but it's got to be about them.
Well, it's smart because I saw a thing on Apple once that they're the only computer company, because they are that has been able to sell a whole bunch of other things now, watches and this and that. And they never started with we're a computer company, we can sell you this. They started with all the whys that you can get from what they do. And by the way, we have a computer that can help you.
The launch of iPod is a wonderful example of that, because there were hundreds of MP3 players out in the world at the time, and they all
the Sony Walkman.
Yeah, but the MP3 players that came out before Apple had many more megabytes and had all these technical specs that everyone thought that mattered. And Apple came along with a more handsome, simpler, but less capable device, and they just said 10,000 songs in your pocket, and then everyone was dancing.
It's so true, and it's so amazing.
And no one remembers how many megabytes or gigabytes the guys had. Who cares?
Absolutely. I've been fortunate to work with many people, around the world, and I know when I visited and we had a good conversation in Boston, we talked about some of the strategic, edgy, and even quote unquote audacious moves you've had the positive results with and been able to do. How do you, with all the stuff we've just talked about, when you're dealing with different people around the world and different cultures and different audiences, how do you bring that all together, and how do you not be overwhelmed by the scope of that?
Having run some global businesses and also helped some global brands, especially from the U.S., you have to be very sensitive of being a U.S.-centric company.
Right.
But it actually doesn't matter whether you're a U.S. company and you're marketing in Europe, or you're a French company and you're here. You have to be a nation of the brand, of your brand, and cut down all those borders of nationality and this, that. No one wants to be the outpost office. No one wants to be the one that has to phone in everything for approval, because the head office, demands it. It's like you gotta give your teams and your groups, no matter where they are, autonomy and goals to succeed and ability to make their own decision. If everything they do, and I know some companies, so I know folks that are very unhappy because they're in Europe somewhere, and everything has to get phoned into California, and they're just so frustrated, and they will be out of there at the soonest opportunity because that company is doing nothing for them or for their career. It's like they can't walk away and say, I did this. It's like, well, I did this with.
Well, it goes back to what this is. This is a leadership series, and you can't develop leaders by not allowing them to grow and develop into leaders.
Exactly.
So it makes a lot of sense. So especially for up-and-coming leaders, then, tell us how, you've developed a lot of relationships over the years. You've taken bold moves. I talk to high school seniors once a year, this whole program here, about the opportunities they have with social media, good and bad, how they use it. But relationships are key. Can you talk to them about how the relationships you've built over the years can impact one's both personal and career growth?
Yeah. No, it's especially looking back now with hindsight, it's like it is so key. As you're going forward, you really don't know. And I was a very shy kid growing up. I was like mortified to public or go out and just stick my hand out and introduce someone. And even still, no one likes to go to a networking event. Everybody's like, well, I could sit here and have dinner and watch TV, or I could go to this wonderful networking event. It's like, but you know what? When you push yourself and you go, almost every time you come back and go, oh my God, I met one person, but that one person was so valuable and so insightful and is going to be such a great connector, or there might be some opportunity. If you sit home, none of that stuff happens. So you just got to get out there. And I've had some great mentors in my life, very inspiring guys, but I also try to pay it forward. I will take coffee with anybody. And I
Even
see
me, you took a coffee with.
I do with you. But I'll a lot of kids right out of school and just sort of, where do I go? What do I do? How do I find my way in? A lot of it's like, a lot of my advice is say yes a lot, and you can always quit, but say yes, get in there, don't wait for the assignment. Don't wait for your boss to tell you what to do. Look at the problem inside wherever you're working and say, hey, I can do that. I can change that, because you'll be doing your boss the biggest favor.
Absolutely. Not to get into a whole other topic, but I read this thing about brain health the other day, and they talked about physical activity and mental activity, and the more you're engaged, even with little babies, the more that they're talked to, the better they will be health-wise and every other aspect, which doesn't sound like rocket science, but it's a lot easier, right, to sit on the couch.
Yes. Nothing happens when you're sitting on the couch.
No. Well, something does happen. You get fat. But that's another story. Well, these are not too personal questions, but kind of personal and kind of like 1 to 3 word answers. Do you have a pet?
No.
There you go. That's a good answer. Do you have a favorite activity or sport?
I mostly just go to the gym and hike. I like outdoors a lot.
It is great. It's great. Yeah. It just frees you up. How about favorite movie or TV show or anything like that?
We're loving HBO. I've never in my life gotten attached to series so much. I never watch network TV. So I'm mostly on HBO or on demand watching movies. But there are some of the serials that have come up on Cinemax and HBO that we especially Sunday nights, we get addicted.
Yeah, I do watch one network thing, Madam Secretary. I like, but I could watch Tia Leone just stand there for that matter. How about, do you have a favorite book?
Favorite book? That's a good question. I was talking to someone the other day. They were having a discussion about books, and I was like, "Oh my God, I am just so behind with reading, because you end up spending all your day reading the internet."
Yeah.
And so then your leisure time is the last thing you think of is a novel. And it's like, God, I have to read more. So
I know the feeling.
It's on my to-do. I've got lots of books that are.
I go spurts myself. It's time. And last, do you have a favorite music and food?
Music. Well, because I had a life as a musician.
Mm-hmm.
I love all kinds of music. I was a particularly loud musician, which I can't be now because I live in an apartment building. And also, musical instruments take up a lot of space. And years ago, when I moved to New York for the first time, I didn't have room for my musical instruments, so I had to sell them all. And then eBay came along, and then I slowly brought them all back, and now I have even more. So I've got a room full of really cool musical toys that I wish I had time to play with more as well. And food, we love cooking, and I always push myself to try new things, try difficult things. Whether it's a souffle, or lately I've tried perfecting my paella.
Nice.
It's not there yet. And the one that I'm really good at now is pad thai, and it came out of a necessity, which was there were no good Thai restaurants near me, and all the pad thai was either too sweet or too sticky, or it wasn't, or too greasy, and it's like we wanted a nice, fresh, tasteful one. So I just figured it out, and it took a lot of trial and error. But
I love pad thai, and I don't like it sticky. So next time I'm in Boston, I just invited myself over to test your pad thai.
You're invited for dinner.
All right, thanks. Hey, thanks so much. That was great.